Good evening. A very difficult day in the Carroll County Courthouse will soon be coming to an end tonight, but right now testimony is still underway.
The testimony today has been full of powerful and very disturbing evidence, and it comes from investigators who were the first on the scene to see the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German after they were murdered 7.5 years ago. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel's been in the courtroom for that disturbing testimony today.
Now, he just stepped out. He joins us live with the developments on this third day of the trial. And Bob, it sounds like a really hard day inside the courtroom.
It really was. We knew at some point during this trial the jury was going to have to see bloody photographs from the crime scene. Today is that day, and it was rough for the jurors and for the family members of Abby and Libby to have to look at those images. Let me start off by explaining to you who testified today on the witness stand. Jason Page and Dwayne Daltzman, they are Indiana State Police crime scene investigators who processed the Delphi murder scene back in 2017. And we also heard from Darren Giancola. He's a detective with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department who was the first law enforcement officer to see the girls' bodies. They all walked jurors through what they saw on the day the girls were discovered murdered. Jurors got to see 43 crime scene photos that Sergeant Page alone took that day. And a warning, what you're about to hear about the photos, just talking about it is disturbing. The pictures show Abby and Libby lying in the woods. Everyone in the courtroom could see the girls' throats had been slit because of the photos that clearly showed their injuries. Libby's body was naked, her face covered in blood on her hand and under her body. Jurors were shown an area several feet away from the girls that investigators said was saturated in blood. There were several sticks lying on and around the girls' bodies. Page and Daltzman explained how they worked together to process the crime scene and how they did their work, taking pictures from the ground and from the air above the scene. Now, some jurors were visibly shaken seeing the photos. One put his hand over his mouth and his face got bright red. Another I saw, she took slow, deep breaths and shook her head slowly as she saw the evidence. Abby and Libby's mothers, they were both in the courtroom today, as they have been throughout these proceedings. They and other family members cried as the jury saw photos of the girls, and they turned away as several of the most graphic photos were displayed on a large screen in front of the jury. The sheriff's detective who testified today, he talked about how challenging it was to see the bodies in the woods until he was very close to them. And he told jurors that he did not attempt to perform any life-saving measures because he said it was apparent Abby and Libby were dead by the time they were deceased, or by the time they were discovered, rather. So all of the witnesses we've heard from so far, including those today, they're presented by the state, by the prosecutor. But when it came time for cross-examination, the defense team pushed back, especially on one piece of evidence that was photographed at the crime scene. I'll tell you about that coming up at 6, and also right now, 13 News' Emily Longnecker, she is still inside the courtroom. We will hear from her about the other witnesses that are still inside testifying right now.
All right, Bob Siegel, thank you so much. And this morning, the defense filed a motion related to how the jury will hear the audio and see the video recovered from Libby German's phone.
Now, that likely includes this audio clip that we have all seen and heard before. It's looped there, as you can see, and this motion does not try to keep the jury from seeing and hearing the recording, but they say that it was enhanced by investigators. The defense wants there to be some guidelines and guardrails about how they see it, and they do not want that looping sound and image.
And they specifically asked to prevent questions which would lead witnesses to identify the words and sounds, writing, quote, "It's up to the jury to determine what words or sounds exist on the recordings." At last check, the state had not filed a response.
Now, our legal expert, Katie Jackson-Lindsay, will join us here in Studio Live in about 10 minutes to help break down some of these major developments from the trial today.
And she'll also join Bob and Emily Longnecker for our Delphi debrief tonight at 10 on WTHR+. You can catch it Monday through Friday during the trial on our free app.
And you can download that on Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, and Roku.